Number here, and we're here on News Talk 580, 94.9 FM, WTAG. We're joined now by the Mayor of the City of Worcester, Joe Brien. Mr. Mayor, how are you?
I'm terrific, Jordan. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
Let's start off, if we can, with a little visit you had at the City Council meeting this past Tuesday from some residents concerned about valuations of property. The city manager has said that the assessor will be at the meeting next Tuesday. Are you concerned at all about the disparaging numbers that some people are talking about? Some conversations dealing with at least allegedly the lack of response from the assessor getting back to people. Any concerns there?
Couple things here, and to start out is, number one, I do have great confidence in the numbers the assessor's office has come out with. Some of the examples that were brought forward had been brought to our attention as counselors and had been kind of fully explained by the city assessor, Bill Ford. So I'm comfortable with what was presented, and I think there's good, strong explanations on why some folks went up and some went down. What did happen this year, and I know you were good enough to have Bill and on the show to talk a little bit about, is that there was a reclassification of houses that have these dormers, and that caused a lot of confusion and certainly some concern by a number of residents who saw their tax bills go up quite a bit. And so I think there was a bottleneck in the sense that there was a whole bunch of people, filing for abatements and had lots of questions. I do feel that at least the questions that came to our office that we forwarded to Mr. Zadelis and to Mr. Ford I believe were answered and got people that may not have liked the answer, but they certainly got answers. And so I'm confident in the process. Certainly, if folks are saying there is some issue about whether abatements were being acted on quickly enough, the city council has asked for information, have the assessor come back. It is a very difficult process, and I certainly understand that if your abatement's not being dealt with and you get kicked over to the state and you have to pay $100 and travel to Boston, that's not appropriate. So we're trying to get a handle on what exactly is going on there. Because certainly people that have questions should get them answered. Their abatements should be heard here locally as promptly as possible and should be resolved, whatever that outcome is locally. So we're expecting Mr. Ford to come in. I want to make sure that people are getting treated fairly, and there's an explanation for stuff. But certainly I think we'll get a lot more answers next week. I appreciate folks bringing the questions forward. I think they're good ones. Yeah, the other thing I would point out, there's a lot of confusion about this, and folks did see some big jumps in tax bills because of how we've gone about looking, especially with these dormers, and a lot of folks thought that was because we didn't vote lowest residential. And I want to remind people then and now that vote, in order to kind of go up equally with both commercial and residential, the difference there, instead of lowest residential, was 15 cents per 1,000. So for the average home, $200,000, it was $30. And some people got a big jump, $400 or $500. That was because of they had a dormer or they were reclassified, not because of the tax vote. So I really think it's good we're having this conversation because it'll clarify some of the misunderstandings.
Well, I think it's good, too. I think it's out in the open. I think that's the way government should operate. And if people have a legitimate criticism, then they should be able to avoid, get that out there. If their information is, if they're misinformed or they're confused about the process, then clarification, I think, is critical because there's no one thing that is a bigger investment in anyone's life than other than their home. And people are concerned about that. So I think those types of things. Let me ask you. I had an idea, and I'm gonna share it with you. I'm not sure whether it's doable. When you have a change, and like all of a sudden you're changing the formula how you look at a house. You change your software. You're suddenly adding dormers. You may be right. You may be wrong. Square footages change. You really get blindsided as a taxpayer. You get the bill in the mail. You have, within 28 days, you have to file your abatement. In order to get an abatement even considered, you have to pay your whole bill. Some people are very marginal, Mayor, as far as economics, and they don't have any extras. Some people pay on their mortgages, and they have that money taken out. Suddenly they have shortages. Or a lot of us might put away money each month knowing that the tax bill's coming in with an understanding it might go up $30, $40, but not $300, $400, $500, and that might be legitimate, Mayor. It might be legitimate, but you blindside the person, and then the assessor has, you have to file your abatement, but you have to pay for it first, which I think is a terrible law. But I understand the revenue stream. But that's not Worcester. That's a state law, and then the assessor decides on the validity of your abatement, and then you have to appeal, and you have to pay for your appeal. And quite honestly, by the time you get to the appellate tax board, Hector is not a puppy anymore. So, and meanwhile, you have to pay each successive year, and the majority of people that go to the appellate tax board don't win. I just want people to understand that. So, so why can't the city, like they're going for a full valuation this year? That means that every 3 years you have to actually do a revaluation of the property. Would it be plausible, because you're not going to set the tax rate before the election, and you're not going to because you're not going to get the certifications probably out of State Department of Revenue before November, and I don't think anyone's afraid to set the tax rate. I'm not saying that, but that's just a realism that we've always had problems with that. Why can't the city send out a preliminary valuation to people and say, if you have a problem with this valuation, this is the valuation that's going to be on your house, because they're not certified yet. But the assessor's going to know sometime in August, September, or October that this is what the valuation of your home is going to be. Send out a letter to people notifying what their valuation is and what the process could be to come in, look over the issues, set up a process, maybe get some interns out of the colleges that could assist the assessor, maybe some retirees out of the RSVP program or somewhere else to assist people, and really be proactive with the homeowners and make them feel comfortable. And because I know myself, if I have a doubt and I get an answer, and I think I'm a pretty objective guy. If you give me an answer that makes sense to me, I'm going away happy.
Right. Or at least feel like you're not getting it stuck to you, right?
Right.
So,
and that's all I ask for. I know I'm going to pay taxes. So why can't we get something out earlier to people and say, this is your preliminary, this is not your final bill, but this is your value of your home, and if you have a question, call in the assessor's office.
I actually got to tell you that I think that's a terrific idea, because I was a little surprised to learn, and as I understand it, you're right on the mark here, that it's state law that says you can't file your abatement until you pay the bill.
Yeah.
I got to say, that does seem a little backwards, right? It's kind of, for example, you get a traffic ticket, right? You get a parking ticket or traffic, right. You can appeal it, and, until your appeal gets heard, you don't have to pay it until your appeal gets heard.
That's right, and there's no penalties.
You might have to pay a little penalty if you lose.
Right. That's fine.
That's a logical process, right? And I think it's a very valid point. And since we can't do a lot on the current law, because it's a state law saying you have to pay up front once you get that bill, even if you want to appeal that increase, I think it's a great idea to get these out initially to people and, warn them to say, listen, this has not been certified, so watch closely, we're going to be sending out the final tax pay within the next 30 days or whatever. Yep. But in the interim, if you've got questions, call this number. And the nice thing about that is that might spread out some of that crush, because I think what happens is the bills go out all in one big batch, and then, the assessor's office gets 1,000 calls in a day, and they just can't keep up with it. Versus, I think your idea is a pretty good one. You could even stagger it over a week or something, right? So you're kind of spreading out that initial notice. You could even call a potential valuation. Yeah,
you could do it by district if you wanted to, and each year change the district. But, advance notice, people are on fixed incomes. We're an aging city. We have a lot of new residents that don't understand values. I've spent a lifetime trying to explain people that the value is not this year's current value. It's a year old, because it goes back to the last January 1st, and people just can't buy onto that. So just an informational thing, and I think it would help the whole process. I think people would be more comfortable.
I got to be honest with you. I really think that's a great idea, and I also think, we're doing so much electronically now that, one of the other ideas, too, might be is that you could post some of this stuff up, so people could even opt to, you say on this date, we could mail it to everybody, and you could opt out and just get an email notification, or just get a notification that goes out saying, hey, look on the website, your evaluation's up.
And and comparable values could be right up there too. You could take the street and put the whole street up on people. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do this without spending a lot of money. And we have some great colleges in Worcester that do a lot of things for us. And I think they could assist in getting all this done, because I know you guys are all up against it with personnel and all these other budgetary problems that you're going to have. So and
the college, getting the college involved is a great idea. You know, I was part of this kickoff for the Earned Income Tax Credit, which is a great tax credit that goes for people who are working hard every day, but don't make a lot of money. Lets them keep a little bit more of that return. And they use college kids from Assumption and from Holy Cross and Worcester State University to kind of help these folks file, especially the elderly and folks that are, I struggle a little bit with some of the language issues, help them file those taxes to qualify for that Earned Income Tax Credit. And it's fueled, the energy for that mostly comes from college kids who are accounting majors, and certainly could do a very similar thing here for helping to provide a little assistance to the assessor's office. Makes a lot of sense to me.
Good. So. Okay, let's move on a little bit. The city manager Tuesday presented, I guess, a State of the City address, as Nick Hatsopoulos talked about it, and did a good job reporting it in the paper. And I have a copy of it after you guys got it and have read through it. It is sobering at best. Even though we knew it was there, it is sobering for me as a lifelong resident here, a taxpayer here, concerned about levels of service and concerned about what I'm paying. This is not a very easy. I'm sure you guys weren't shocked, and I'm sure as the mayor you weren't shocked, but the stock reality is we've got a big-time problem here.
Absolutely, and you're right. We've been talking about this on your show, on the council floor for quite a while, on the school committee side. We've known it's coming, but it's still really sobering to see the final numbers that the manager anticipated, or what he sees to be at least, what he sees the most likely scenario, and paired with the reductions in staff, police, fire, parks and recreation, public service workers, that would have to come to, if we're going to kind of respond to that budget challenge, which we have to. And I must say, so it was challenging, certainly, and discouraging, because as you all know, and I think we have most folks would agree, that the city, to be successful and continue to thrive, you need to have safe streets, you need to have strong public safety and reasonably nice service of parks and playgrounds and public works and decent schools that provide good, strong educational foundations for children. And so, obviously, we're really deeply concerned. Now, there is credit to the manager and his team that they've been working hard with our local area healthcare providers, our hospitals, to figure out how we can begin to attack in a meaningful way, not just asking employees to pay more, but in a meaningful way to attack some of these spiraling healthcare costs. And, the plan that's put forward, I think, really deserves a deep look by everyone. I mean, this is really creative work that's been done to say, hey, listen, if you stay in the city, stay in the network, go to UMass, go to St. Vincent's, go to local doctors, you can pay a rate that it looks like it might be lower than what you're paying now. If you go outside that network, you have to pay a little bit more. And it really looks like we could make some significant savings. Obviously, all the working people in the city need to see the details and see how that impacts themselves and make what decision's best for them. But I feel like there's an opportunity here that we could all sit down together through the collective bargaining process and try to get people on board and say, listen, we've got some real savings here that could help save jobs and keep services up and keep teachers in the classroom and police in the streets. How do we look seriously at this, and how do we figure out what it's going to take to get folks to sign up? Because I think it's really going to be a real big breakthrough if we can get people migrating into these new plans. Which, by the way, will help the local economy, right? It's great that you'll be supporting our local institutions as well.
And I agree wholeheartedly. I think the city manager really deserves kudos the way he presented this, and the non-bargaining group. He's already instituted this, and I think he's really shown some substantial leadership in this thing. And I understand that people don't want to give things that they already have, but the reality is we're all in the same boat. My insurance, my co-pays have gone up substantially. I had nothing to say about it. That's what it is. And my base went up a small amount. My co-pays went up substantially. And that's just the way it is. My first hospitalization, God forbid, is substantially higher. If I want to go out of the system, I pay more. If I don't want a generic drug, it's astronomical. So all of those things are there. The other thing I think the manager presented to you as mayor and to the council, and I hope the school committee gets it too, is that something's going to happen in the legislature. The speaker has been very emphatic. He wants everyone over at GIC. But the manager has offered to employees and to you and to the council as the policy-setting body an option of we can keep our own control, we can have our own collective bargaining here, at the same time have a look-alike plan. Not a copycat plan, but a look-alike plan. And that's Governor Patrick and Lieutenant Governor Murray's plan to say, hey, look, we're going to give you a look-alike plan, opportunity, Mr. and Mrs. Local Government, but if you don't do it, guess what? We're going to force you into it. So something's coming, and it would be a lot better for all of our employees in the city of Worcester and all the people that care about this community to do this voluntarily.
Couldn't agree more. I think, listen, the real question here is the folks locally here want to have say over the design, the kind of future of their own plans, because you're absolutely right. I mean, there is a lot of pressure, especially from the legislature saying, and the governor saying, if you can't do that, we're going to put you into this GIC where you're going to have no control. And I fundamentally believe in the collective bargaining process, and I think there's a real opportunity for us to say, hey, let's keep these decisions local. Let's make sure that as we go forward after this first year of this plan that we're keeping local people at the table to make decisions that keep the interests of folks working here in the community in mind. And I'm completely in agreement with you. I think he's gotten way out ahead of this. Most communities aren't doing this kind of tiered local network plans that really, I think, could provide substantial savings. And once again, as he mentioned, it was kind of lost in the shuffle, is that especially with some of the lower price plans that have higher deductibles, he's also saying that the city looks like they'll be able to pay the first couple months of the premium, which would negate the cost or come close to negating the cost of that initial deductible. So, for a lot of folks who are working for the city, this could be a net savings, not a net loss. So I think it's very important that people who are working for the city take a serious look at this, and I think absolutely local control is far better than having your plan dictated by some bureaucrat in Boston.
Well, listen, I'm all for collective bargaining. I think good parties sit down and bargain. It's something I believe in. I believe in conversation. I believe in like missions. And if we can see the forest from the tree here and understand that these are difficult times, and they're not going to get better in the short run here. We've got 2 or 3 years ahead of us of serious things, and I think it would be a tragedy if we end up losing 50 firemen, 50 police officers, 150 teachers or 100 teachers. I mean, I think that's just tragedy time for this community. I think we're a shell of ourselves, and we're not going to be able to provide service levels that I stay in Worcester for.
That's right, and it's a great dovetail, just as you said. The census numbers kind of reinforce that people are voting with their feet and moving to this community or staying in this community because they value just the things you said. Good schools, great neighborhoods, nice parks and playgrounds for the kids to play in, great high levels of public safety, and good levels of service I think we can be proud of. And the reality is that we've got to continue to provide that level of service, but to do that, we've got to make sure it's sustainable. That means we've got to grow the tax base, and we've talked a lot about that, but we've also got to rein in some of these costs. And once again, listen, I'm a pro-union guy. I don't run from that label, but I do think good union position and the good worker position here is, hey, how do we get these costs under control so we can continue to provide a good level of services and well-paying jobs and support folks who are working for the city and keep it sustainable, right? I think that's the key, and I think really both masters, as I say, can be served.
Yeah, you're right.
Do right by our workers and do right by the citizens, I think, by taking some very common sense steps that have been outlined.
The name of the game is to preserve jobs as we can, because that preserves services and to grow the tax base and do all of those things. In order to do that, you have to have a reasonable approach to this thing. And if people just dig in and say, no way, we're not doing anything, then the ramifications are going to be severe. And the difficulty is that all of us are going to suffer. And we're all going to be paying more for less. And that's going to cause a reversal of people, and we already have. I mean, there's a lot of talk in Massachusetts and other states all over this, certainly in the Northeast, about white flight, and we don't want that to happen. I'm happy that minorities are coming here and becoming part of the fabric of this community, because that's what we all did when Europe and everyone else came over here. But we have to have a comprehensive look at this thing, and we've got to get some control costs. And
that's right. And listen, great point. We got to keep, what I like to say, I don't care if you're white, black, brown, Latino, we need to keep middle-class families in the city. Right?
That's right.
That's really the key here, and I care fundamentally about wealthy people and poor people, but critical to the future, we need to keep working-class and white families in the city. And the key to that is good schools and decent services and strong neighborhoods and safe neighborhoods. And that's really the challenge. And you see other cities have not gotten this right. As you saw in the Globe article this morning, lots of cities have seen a mass exodus in middle-class families, right?
Well, we're doing it right. We got a good manager. We got a good government. It's clean. It's honest. It's upfront. And I think we just have to get I think everyone's going to get to the table together. Mayor, thanks so very much for spending some time with us. We appreciate it. It was a good give and take, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much, Jordan. Great talking to you.
All right, take care. Mayor of the City of Worcester, Joe Brien. We'll take a break. We'll be back.